Thank you. We wanted more there, I know, but it was impossible. Thanks to all the fans. This is an amazing day. Thank you, guys.
What's going on, motorsports fans? This is Jared here with the Bearded Garagistas. Again, I am on my lonesome. The boys will be back eventually. I have talked to them. I set a date for Wednesday, actually, to talk to my buddy Anthony about his trip to the USGP, so I can't wait to get him on for that. It's going to be fun. Let me adjust my mic here. Recorded another episode of my podcast, Surreal as It Gets, last night with my buddy Aaron. I'm not going to lie, it definitely got weird. Go ahead and check that one out. A little bit away from motorsports. It's pretty much just about anything and everything random, just a couple of guys sitting down and chatting, guys, girls, whoever I can get on the show. To be honest with you, I just love podcasting so much I decided to make a second one. So we are going to talk about the 2021 Mexico City Grand Prix, 71 laps, 4.3 kilometer circuit in Mexico City. And I guess the celebration, the highlight of the weekend would be Sergio Perez, first Mexican driver to reach the podium, racing in his home race. So congratulations to him. He also got driver of the day, well deserved. Top 10 looks like Verstappen, Hamilton, Perez, Gasly, Leclerc, Sainz, Vettel, Raikkonen, Alonso, Norris. Other notable finishes: Ricciardo finished in 12th, Bottas finished in 15th with the fastest lap. Even though it looks like the Red Bulls were trying to prevent that, which is funny. And we're going to kick it off right away with probably the biggest discrepancy, the biggest fight, the biggest Twitter beef of the weekend would be, why didn't Daniel Ricciardo get a penalty going into turn one? I personally think that it was not as malicious as Bottas. I found people online comparing Ricciardo's crash into turn one just as Bottas's crash into turn one a couple of weeks ago, and that's ridiculous. Bottas pretty much slammed into the back of somebody, lifting him up off the ground. Ricciardo got a little overzealous, yes, but I'll tell you why I'm okay with it not being a penalty. Ricciardo even said himself, he went in, he locked up, he was able to adjust and then try to make the turn, and that's when he made the contact. Personally, you want to know what I think? I think that Bottas checked up to allow Hamilton to clear through the corner faster, and the combination of Bottas checking up and Ricciardo coming through. Yes, Ricciardo did make a mistake, but Ricciardo coming through, Bottas checking up is what caused the accident. If Bottas would have continued on the path that he was going without slowing up, even though he was being pinched by Max and Lewis, I don't think the wreck would have happened. I don't even think, and if it did, it wouldn't have been very much contact. So I'm okay with a lap one incident. I'm okay with no penalty. On top of that, also, Ricciardo already did serve the penalty. It pushed him to where it pushed him, and he pretty much was non-relevant for the rest of the race. It kind of sucked watching it. I'm not going to lie, though, the race did turn into like a DRS train, and not many people were able to pass. It kind of sucked there. So, yes, I understand that I am a Ricciardo fan. He is my dude. I will also say, yes, he made a mistake, but I kind of agree with the call and the fact that I believe Bottas was checking up and allowing Hamilton to go through, and this is what caused the issue. On to the second issue. There was a lot this weekend. On to the second one. Let's go into the fact that Hamilton called out his teammate Bottas for not blocking Max Verstappen properly. Personally, get the hell out of here. He was driving right down the middle of the racetrack. Short of driving Max Verstappen off the track, Max had way too much of a toe. He pulled up alongside of him. What are you really trying to say? Bottas should have pushed Max wide? Are you really trying to say Bottas should have forced the issue and stayed in it and stayed out wide? And if he wrecked into Max, who cares? As long as he gave you enough room on the inside. Quit with the bullshit. If you can't beat him, you can't beat him. All right, you tried to block him out. I'm pretty sure Bottas did his job as best he could. And it is what it is. So quit your bitching. If you can beat them, beat them. If you can't, you can't. And you know what? You showed your pace in qualifying. You didn't show your pace in the race, and it bit you in the ass. You're lucky. You tried the undercut. It didn't work. Perez was still almost ran you down. He was fast. He just couldn't get close enough to make the pass at the end, even with fresher tires. Not saying anything against Hamilton. I thought he raced a hell of a race at the end to salvage what he salvaged. And it's weird that you say he salvaged a second place finish, but essentially that's what happened. He was out. The car was not on the same level as the Red Bull on the long runs, and it wasn't, the cooling issues we know with the Mercedes, as Brett has said 1.5 billion times, that the cooling issue in the Mercedes is always an issue, and it always slows down the car at these tracks. The high altitude of Mexico City definitely took that into account. And Red Bull came out with an upgrade apparently this weekend that was mainly for cooling because they knew where they were coming to. So I'm not saying that Hamilton wasn't good enough to get where he was going. I'm saying that the car was, definitely made into play with that. But that being said, chill with the whole, he should have blocked him better. Come on now. You're splitting hairs. Third controversy would be Red Bull's own Helmut Marko and what's his face? The team principal. You all know who I'm talking about. I can't remember his name. This is where I need Brett to kind of jump in and be like, hey, his name is so-and-so. I can see his face. He's married to the chick from Spice Girls. You know what I'm talking about. He got on into an interview and literally threw Yuki Tsunoda onto the bus. And I feel like Yuki at this point, he seems very dejected. You look at his Twitter page, you look at, him and his pressers, and it just seems like he's not really having fun. And I feel like somebody like Yuki probably performs better when he's having a good time and he's having fun. I thought it was really a poor showing by the Red Bull team to say that they got Tsunoda'd and thrown under the bus there. Tsunoda was way off the track. Yes, it broke concentration, but come on. There was no yellow flags. And yeah, it's tough that it happened. But again, just like I said in the last episode, it just goes to show that Red Bull have learned nothing about coaching young drivers. They haven't. And thank God they found themselves with Perez, because it seems like this is the only way that they're going to go ahead and be successful with a secondary driver, is finding somebody who they can throw into that seat. And it's unfortunate. And I feel bad for Tsunoda, and I hope he sticks it out. I hope he continues doing what he's doing. But hey, it is what it is at this point. I will say that the Turn 1 incident, not only with Ricardo and Bottas, but with Ocon. I believe it was Ocon getting squeezed by Tsunoda going airborne. He also got squeezed by Mick Schumacher. Tsunoda and Schumacher out of the race at this point. Ocon was able to continue on, but he got squeezed. There's nothing they can do there. There's essentially 4 people in that turn, with, I think it was Alonso on the far outside of that left turn. 4 into maybe 2 doesn't go. Somebody was going to take the brunt of that. Tsunoda happened to be on the outside, who's trying to stay within track limits. Another thing that we have, just plain and simple ridiculousness. There's no interpretation of the rules. Okay. You get to a point where that's just plain and simple at this point. And I think it's starting to play into the driver's mentality about where they want to be on the track. And that's unfortunate, because I think it's causing issues on the track as far as Tsunoda, where he could have maybe gone around that Ballard, whatever the hell they say it in English, sounds ridiculous. He could have went around that little pole and come back onto the track. But where would he have come out? Would there have been a penalty? Would there have been a 5-second penalty? I think you've gotten these kids so nervous that at this point they're just trying to squeeze back onto the racetrack, and you get something dangerous like this where, God forbid, they clip tires and the car rolls over, and then you got him hanging there like a cow. So I think that they have some things to go over the rules, and to further my dejection, I guess, with the rules and how upset I am about the rules. There was a poll done on racefans.net. If you haven't checked them out, check them out. Racefans.net. There was a poll done that said, do you agree with Daniel Ricciardo not getting a penalty pretty much against his collision with Valtteri Bottas. This is how confusing this is. This is where we are with rules. 28% said strongly agree. 33% said slightly agree. It says, do you agree Daniel Ricciardo should have been penalized for his collision with Bottas? 28% strongly agree. 33% slightly agree. 5% neither agree nor disagree. 11% disagree. And 22% strongly disagree. It's so even. And don't get me wrong, the majority, yes, is towards agree that he should have got a penalty for it. But my point is, it's pretty spread out. And why is something so big as far as a car spinning around, somebody hitting them, somebody going too deep into a turn in turn one, why are the rules, which are supposed to be set in stone, so gray area? You know, this is my continuing issue with Formula One. If you're going to enforce rules, make them black and white. There can be no gray area in racing because we all know that, you know, that's where the drivers, that's where the teams are going to sit. They're going to sit in the gray area and try to take advantage of that. So I have a problem with that. We're going to go, let's go team by team. Let's not get crazy. We'll start with Red Bull. Perez becomes the first Mexican driver to get on a podium in Mexico. He raced a hell of a race. He raced down one of the best drivers in the world, arguably one of the greatest to ever do it. His car was a little faster, I'll give him that, but he was solid. He did not mess up. He made the tires last. He was able to really make a strong showing, and he was able to do it in front of his fans. I would like to think that he did it and he was able to do it because of the excitement. Every time he went through the stadium section, you could hear the cheers from the crowd over the sounds of the race cars on the track. And that was, for somebody sitting at home on my couch, I thought it was phenomenal. Every time they went by, to hear that roar from the crowd, it was great. Great braking by Max on lap 1 to get around that outside corner. He had great pace throughout the entire race. He managed his tires well. He didn't make any rash decisions. He did have to work through traffic. He didn't have any problems there. Max raced a solid race. Him getting around the outside of turn 1 was pivotal. I think he knew that. I think he played it perfectly. I think whether Hamilton thinks it or not, if Bottas even would have pushed him wide, he would have went right around the outside. He would have came back onto the track and kept the position. He had the first place. He had first place going into that turn, in my opinion. Whether he keeps it coming out or not, I don't think that's big of a deal. To be honest with you, he probably would have caught, I think Max would have caught Hamilton and passed him, whereas Perez struggled to pass because he never really got close enough. But I do think Max would have definitely gotten the job done, regardless of if Bottas tried to block him stronger. Or I think that's code for try to take him out if he doesn't want to comply and doesn't want to fall into line. But what are you going to do there? Mercedes. Going to Mexico, I said, this is Newman. So Newman wrote this. Going into Mexico, I said Max will win the Drivers' Championship and Mercedes will take the Constructors. Leaving Mexico, Red Bull might be able to pull this off. I wouldn't say might be able to. I would say there's a damn good chance. Everything is still on the table here. And the fact that the Constructors' Championship is still on the table adds even more to the Drivers' Championship because the team. Here's the question. Let me lay it out there for you. Is the team going to put the driver first? And what I mean by that is if it gets down to it where Perez needs to take the fastest lap away from Lewis Hamilton. I know this is a far-fetched idea, but think about, Max and Lewis Hamilton are tied at the end and Lewis Hamilton has the fastest lap to give him the 1 point advantage. Do they pit Sergio Perez to give him soft tires to try to get that fastest lap away from Lewis Hamilton? Do they keep him out there to try to win a Constructors' Championship to whereas if they did pit him, he would sacrifice the champion? Like, you don't know. And I'm not sure Red Bull, as much as they love Max Verstappen, I'm not sure if they would give up a Constructors' Championship just to see Max Verstappen stand on the top rung. Now, don't get me wrong. Helmut Marko pretty much gets a hard on every time Max Verstappen sits his round ass in a car. But I can't see them putting the driver before the team. Vice versa. I don't know if Mercedes would do it either. They've never been in the scenario where they've had to make the decision. So I'm kind of curious to see if Red Bull or Mercedes would make that call. So I guess that remains to be seen. Hamilton going in. Oh, it's funny. Newman also wrote about the tire situation where right after Hamilton gets off the radio complaining about his tires, Perez jumps on the radio and says, tires are good. Tires are coming along now. Not even that they're good. Tires are coming along now. I thought that was hilarious. That couldn't have been better timing. Perez can't hear Hamilton on the radio. The pit wall can hear him, but Perez can't hear that. So just the random timing of that, in my opinion, was hilarious. So that point of the race gave me a little bit of a chuckle. You kind of needed it at that point of the race because, again, in the beginning of these races, it just seems like the drivers are managing fuel, managing tires, managing energy, just trying to get through the first couple of laps. They all lose their mind in the first corner and they want to kill each other in the first corner. But after that, they kind of fall into a line and they start playing the long game. Personally, I think it's the most boring part of the race, but it's what you got to do at this point. And then going back to the Hamilton throwing Bottas under the bus, I just think he's a little quick to do that. Even before he saw the video, it seemed like he was doing it in the after race interviews. Distasteful, in my opinion. But I'm always extra tough on Hamilton, and it's not because I don't like Hamilton. It's because I expect so much from a 7-time world champion. I think people need to understand that. I don't have any prejudice in my heart. I don't think that he's a horrible driver or a bad person. I think he's got a horrible taste in clothing. But hey, that's just me. On his side, he lives over in Europe, and they got all the fancy clothing shows. More power to him. If that's how he wants to dress, hey, you feel good, you race good. I used to play on a football team where one of his kids. We sucked at the time. We were losing every game. But he used to tell me, if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you play good. So if that's what Lewis Hamilton wants to do, great. I will say, I do think that he is held to a higher standard. I think Alonso is held to a higher standard. I think Vettel's held, Raikkonen, even Ricciardo. Even if you're not a world champion, if you're a veteran of the sport, you're held to a higher standard. All right? Rookies make mistakes. A couple years in, you make a mistake here and there. Even veterans will make mistakes. But when you get behind the mic and you're throwing teammates under the bus and you've won 7 world championships, come on now. That's a discussion for behind closed doors. We all know what you're thinking. Just take it off the track and deal with that, as a professional. AlphaTauri. Tsunoda went for a ride. He had a rough weekend. Spun around in qualifying. According to Red Bull, ruined Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez's lap, which, to be honest with you, was a blessing in disguise. So Helmut Marko should probably take Tsunoda out to dinner tonight and buy him whatever the hell he wants, because them being on the second row allowed them to get the slipstream going into turn 1. To be completely honest with you, maybe that was the plan all along. Maybe Tsunoda was told to run off the track and they were told to slow up, so they had a reason to go slower. You don't know. You really don't know. And there's so much gray area in Formula One. There's so much conspiracy at this point. It's easy to pull out those, alien stories. They did this to get this because of this, and it's all speculation. Could be. You never know. Gasly being Gasly. I have that written down. Gasly is continuously being Gasly. 4th place finish for Gasly, right off the podium. Quiet race. Didn't really hear much about him. Kind of got into his groove and did his thing, and made no mistakes, had no issues in the pit stops. He didn't have a teammate because his teammate was already out of the race. He ran a hell of a race. I can't say much more about him. I mean, does the guy deserve a top tier drive? I think the answer is 100% yes. I would put him on the same level of driving at this point as Leclerc. I think he's a little less consistent than Leclerc is, but he's taking a car that shouldn't be where it is and putting it in fourth position. Right? He's not even in the hunt. You know, McLaren and Ferrari are vying for third place in the constructors, and you got Gasly finishing in fourth place. If he doesn't get taken out, hit, if some craziness doesn't go wrong, he's finishing races very well. If you give him a teammate, he's a lot higher in the constructors championships. I don't know exactly where he is as far as where he's finished in every race, but I would probably go out on a limb and say he's finished fairly well in every race that he's been able to complete. So hats off to Gasly. I really hope the best for that kid. He's one of my favorite underrated drivers, and I think he is an underrated driver. I think everybody needs to understand that he's an underrated driver. Ferrari. Leclerc was not happy about that swap, man. You could just tell by the silence in the radio and that big sigh that he was really upset about it. Reluctant to give it up, but he gave it up. Could he have given it up earlier? Yeah, I guess he could have, but it would have also compromised him desperately against the car that was right behind Sainz. So I don't know if he, was doing that on purpose. I don't think so. Sainz apparently thought that, he was swerving all over to keep me behind him. I don't think that's the case. I think Leclerc was actually swerving all over so Sainz could catch up to him, and then Leclerc let him by like immediately after that radio call came on the TV. I think Leclerc made a teammate decision there. I don't think that he was malicious in any way, and he ended up finishing the race ahead of Sainz anyway. And Sainz was faster with the faster tires, but from what I view as the best driver pairing on the grid, they didn't have a bad day either. You're fifth and sixth place respectively, Leclerc and Sainz. They raced a hell of a race. They were consistent. They were right where they needed to be. They needed to finish ahead of both McLarens in this race, knowing that McLaren was struggling through qualifying, through practice. They were not there. The Ferraris needed a good showing. They're normally pretty good in Mexico. They needed the good showing to get a little breather room in between them and McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. They understood what they needed to do. They went out there and they succeeded. I still will say that the pit wall of Ferrari is probably their biggest weakness right now, other than the car. I think the car will come around eventually. I don't think that the designers at Ferrari are going to let Red Bull and McLaren run away with it, but you never know with the roller coaster that is Ferrari. Aston Martin. Vettel flashes old Vettel. He top 10 finish. What did he finish? 7th? I think he finished 7th. Hell of a race for him. Think he did well. Think he showed well. You can't really say much more about him. You expect him to be right around 7th in every race. So when he doesn't come in that position, you're kind of like, what the hell is going on? Stroll is Stroll. Like I said a billion times before, I said it in the last episode, I don't think he should be where he is. I don't think he deserves a seat. I think he's got to go. He wrecks in the last turn in qualifying on his first lap. I just don't see it. I don't see where everybody is so fascinated with Stroll. He can't pass people. He gets passed constantly. He doesn't manage his tires very well most of the time. Sometimes he comes through. But as skills needed to bring that Aston Martin to where his teammate is in 7th, he's nowhere near that. So I'm not sure what they're going to do about that. I'm curious. I would love to debate that with Brett and my brother Brett and see exactly what he thinks about what Papa Stroll is going to do with that team. But it should be interesting. Raikkonen out of nowhere with an 8th place finish. Hey man, anytime an Alfa Romeo can finish in the top 10, you'll take it. Especially when Raikkonen has a clean race. You have no crazy radio calls from him. Gio's got nothing going on. He's definitely done this year. I'm not saying he's a bad driver. I think he's out of Formula One. Newman wants to know who gets that last seat. Honestly, I have no clue. I think they're going to fill it with a Formula 2 guy. I don't think they're going to put a veteran in there next to Bottas. I think they'll put some kind of person in Formula 2. I don't think they have too much of a presence in Formula 2, so I'm curious to know who would get that spot. Possibly somebody who comes with the biggest bankroll. The pickings are good in Formula 2 right now. You could take 2 or 3 of those drivers, put them into Formula 1 and let them run. So I think it's whoever comes with the biggest purse, unfortunately. Whereas me, I would probably... I mean, it's hard to say this. My pockets are not the one funding a Formula 1 team, but I would love to see the best driver get the drive versus the one who comes with the biggest bankroll. But we all know. Renault, Ocon is underrated. I put a question mark at the end of that. If you look at him compared to Alonso, because Alonso was solid today. Alonso's been solid all year. And we know Alonso's a 2-time champion. Look at Ocon, though. He's usually fairly close to Alonso, if not beating him. He has a first place finish this year. Yes, it was a weird finish, but it was a finish. He's not too far off of a 2-time champion, a 40-year-old racer who has all the experience in the world, who has done nothing but build teams back up to the top rung. He's done it with McLaren, and you could see that with McLaren's car right now. And he's doing it with Renault. And I think Renault is struggling right now. But if you want to compare apples to apples and you compare Ocon to Alonso, I mean, definitely not doing that bad. So do I think Ocon is probably one of the more underrated drivers on the grid? I do. I think he deserves a little bit of credit. I think he makes mistakes. I think he's still young-minded in some of the decisions he makes. But overall, I would say an impressive driver. McLaren had a hellacious day, which sucks because they're my team. There's no two ways around it. Norris was not fast. Salvaged the 10th place finish, gets 1 point. Ricciardo's car was nowhere. It was a DRS train, and not many people were passing, so I'll give you that. But the problem is you can't go out here in a Constructors' Championship as tight as it is with Ferrari, and Ferrari finishing 2 in the top 10, 2 almost in the top 5, and you're going to come out here and have these inconsistent days. Newman wants to know what's been going on with Norris these last few races. Where has his pace gone since Monza? Since Monza, Spa, he was first until he went into the wall there. It seems like he has the pace, and it's the same with Ricciardo, though. They're inconsistent. Sometimes they're really fast, unbelievably fast. Other times they're really slow, unbelievably slow. They make weird head mistakes. I'm not sure if it's the game plan that they got going on before they get into the seat, what they're talking about, what they're trying to do. I don't know if they're overthinking it. I would love to be a fly on the wall at some of their debriefs, especially coming out of Mexico with how bad it was. They were just nowhere to be seen. Yes, Ricciardo's problem was Ricciardo in that first turn. Would he have been higher? Yeah, I think he was vying for, a 4th or 5th place right there behind Bottas. Yeah, he kind of put himself into his own situation there. I get it. But the car was nowhere all weekend, you have to admit. So what is going on there? What changes can they make coming down the stretch here to try to beat out Ferrari for that 3rd constructor spot? It's going to be interesting. Newman's going to sit here and ask me if I think Ricciardo should have gotten a penalty for the lap 1 incident. I already said no. Newman says, I say no. Bottas slowed down to let Hamilton through and Ricciardo got caught up. That's exactly what I think. I really think that Bottas checked up to let Hamilton go through because that was the game plan. Bottas checks up in turn 1. Hamilton goes through and takes the lead. Max Verstappen, he just, spoiled the party a little bit. Whipped this thing out and was like, nah, I'm coming around the outside. So hell of a race, hell of a turn 1, I would say, for that race. The rest of the race, fairly boring. Some of the time deltas made it interesting for pit stops. It wasn't even a 2-stopper. I think it should be. I think they should make Mexico into a 2-stop race. I think they should soften up the tires and make them come in twice. I think it would put some more pressure on the pit wall. It would put some more pressure on the racers and the drivers to understand when they need to go full throttle, when they need to back off. You start adding more pit stops. Yeah, they're going to save tires probably, but you might get that one that takes that gamble where he knows he's got to pit twice. Let's go full out and see what happens kind of thing. So we'll see how that goes. Williams, man, Russell, it's brutal watching him race sometimes because you know he's got the talent, you know he's got the speed, and he fell like a brick through that pack. He made up so much room in that first turn there, so many positions in the first turn there, and then literally just falls off. And it looked like he was dragging a bag of cinder blocks around behind him in that car, how much he got past. It was tough to watch. I'm excited to see him in the Mercedes next year. Do I think he's going to be able to take the battle to Hamilton right off the bat? I'm starting to say no. I think he's going to be fast. I know he'll vie for some wins. I know he'll be on a lot of podiums. But is he going to be that immediate threat to Hamilton? No. I think for 1 year, I think at least it'll be getting used to the car. Even though the car is changing, getting used to the car, getting a feel for how a different team conducts day-to-day operations, get slotted in and see what he does. I mean, I'm excited to see him. I think for him at this point, he is just ready for this season to be over. As much as he loves racing, loves getting behind a wheel, knowing that you're going to Mercedes next season, knowing that it's not getting any better this season, there's no real fighting for much. He's already looking to the next year. Latifi was a speed bump for the leaders. I think he was lapped twice, possibly. Again, nowhere on pace, which is weird because the Williams is usually pretty fast in a straight line. You got two pretty long DRS zones at Mexico. You would have thought that they would have been able to make up some time in the straights, even though they lost it in the turns. It's just some of the turns are so slow and so in need of aerodynamics that the Williams unfortunately just doesn't have this year. That's probably where they lost most of their time, I would say. But it's tough. And I think Latifi is not a bad driver. I don't think he's as skilled as Russell to put that car where it needs to be, but he's been giving Russell a run for his money. Haas, I mean, I don't even know anymore. I don't know what they're going to do. Mick was out in lap 1. Mazepin's spin was horrible. He stayed out of the way well, which was good. He was lapped twice, so thank God he didn't get in the way. His I think it was quali that it was quali when he came up behind Mick and he came on the radio and asked his pit crew, his engineer, if he could pass Mick because Mick was slowing him up. They're queued up, you son of a bitch. Where the hell are they all going to go? Are you going to pass the other two guys in front of Mick too? Like, not just that it's Mick. If it was anybody, would you ask to pass in that situation? There's 4 cars queued up there. I don't know if he's being smart ass. I don't know if he really thinks that Mick's holding him up there. Literally 4 cars in a queue, and you're the 4th one, and you're going to bitch about the 3rd car in the queue. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think at this point, he probably hates what he's doing. He hates where he's at. If that continues, if he hates it so much, and even if he pushes Mick out and Mick goes somewhere else, he's just going to continue to do the same thing. To be honest with you, at this point, you should put Mazepin and what's the guy's name who races F2? That the British kid who does nothing but bitch and complain. They should put them on the same team together and just put a camera in front of their face and let them ride it out because they'll probably just scream and yell at each other for the entire year. They're children, and I just don't see it. I don't see it panning out. So maybe Haas stays on long enough to warrant Mazepin leaving and they get back to their ways with that money. Maybe the money needs to be there and they find another driver. I'm really nervous to see where Haas goes. Being an American, wanting an American team, would love to see an American driver. It ain't going to be on Haas, I tell you that much, because they need all the money they can get, and they're not going to get it by putting an American driver in the seat with them not winning any races. So that was Mexico. It was exciting. It was fast. It had a little snooze in the beginning, in the middle of the race. First turn was impressive. Everyone drove a solid race. Even Hamilton holding on to a car with horrible tires. It just wasn't as exciting as I really thought it was going to be. I thought it was great for Checo to finish on the podium, first Mexican driver on the podium. on to the next one, I would say. And I can't wait for next week. We got a triple header, I think. I think next week's a race, and then the week after that's a race. I can't wait. Let's get to Abu Dhabi, to be honest with you. Let's kill this thing. I want to see who wins the championship. I don't know if anybody else is as excited as me. I wouldn't say that this race is at the top of the list of excitement, but I will say that this season is still, just as I said last episode, will go down in lore as one of the best ever. If you like the episode, like and subscribe, 5 stars, tell your friends about it. Really appreciate you. We are on YouTube. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever the hell it's called, Spotify, Spreaker.com hosts the podcast, and I appreciate that. Make sure you check out Surreal as It Gets if you get some time to listen to another podcast. And we'll see you next weekend. See you guys later. Peace.